We are going to begin on our autumn landscape in the sky with a large square-headed brush, a good amount of water, and a mixture of titanium white and primary blue. Now I'm using a large square-headed brush because it can hold a lot of paint, and with the water we can really get a lot of coverage quite quickly. So it's really fantastic for that. I'm also using blue as a main color because it's the complementary color of orange and it'll really help bring out all of those warmer tones that we'll use later. So from there I'm taking some titanium white and I'm applying that to the bottom middle of my sky and blending very softly with my brush upwards. This is going to create darker edges and a slight vignette. This is really going to help draw the eye in down towards the middle of our painting. So from there I'm going to take a smaller square-headed brush and begin to draw in some mountains. Now the blue underneath is still not dry, and so it's going to mix, which is actually fantastic because the sky is naturally going to reflect upon the mountains and the mountains are going to adopt that blue. So as opposed to me having to blend in a lot of blue in my mixtures, it's naturally doing it for me on the canvas and I'm saving a lot of time and effort. From there, I'm going in and I'm applying additional shadows to the darker sides of my mountains, and this is going to give it a lot of additional depth and show that it is a three-dimensional object within our landscape. Then I'm taking a very small square-headed brush and simply drawing on details. These are little pathways in the mountains and they're just going to help add to the realism of all of that. You can do this with lighter or darker colors, but I thought I would just do it with lighter to save some time here. Once I'm fairly happy with my mountains, I'm taking my larger round-headed brush and in a circular motion apply a mist and a fog to the base of my mountains. This is simply going to add a lot of depth to our landscape and really create some distance between our foreground and our background. It's also a nice little transitionary piece. Now, using the same small square-headed brush that I used in the mountains for the detail work, I'm going down to the bottom of the fog and I'm applying a litany of trees in vertical strokes. I'm trying to ensure that all of these trees are slightly different from the one beside it and that I'm also dragging them down fairly far. I'm creating these sharp edges at the bottom as well to ensure that they will act as a reflection for the water that I'm also going to place in this piece. So make sure that your trees are all very different and that the bottoms are almost a mirror of the tops. It's also important to note that because this is the far distance of our landscape, you want to ensure that the green is fairly desaturated and you're saving all of your very vibrant, very high contrast greens for your foreground. From there, I'm taking my larger square-headed brush and simply drawing on some water and reflections. By using a lot of water on my brush and the same blues that I used in the sky, I moved halfway up the trees and I moved the brush very lightly on top so you can still see them underneath and you have these beautiful little reflections. Then I took some titanium white and simply added some highlights to the foreground. Now I'm going back to add more additional trees, this time with a square-headed brush that's fairly old. It has a lot of inconsistencies, and so when I do a tapping motion with it, I render a myriad of very different little strokes and implications. And this is really what's going to make it look so much more real. In real life, all of your trees are going to be different, they're going to have their own characteristics, and so old brushes are fantastic for that scenario. Now the trees in the background and middle ground are far from being completed, but I need to let them dry very quickly. So I'm moving on to my foreground here and just creating a very dark silhouette to work on top of later. I'm going to let that dry and then come back to it in just a little bit. That's really fantastic about acrylics, how quickly they dry, and so you don't have to worry about colors blending and mixing inappropriately. You can just give it a little time, give it a little bit of space, and render something wonderful. So from there, I'm taking some orange and finally working in my autumn colors. I'm doing it both to the tops of the trees and in the reflections down below. I'm working in the background, I'm working in the middle ground, and I'm just ensuring that most of the painting is going to also have these warmer tones to offset all of the cool tones in the sky and the waterway. So here, while I let all of those oranges dry, because I'm not done with the background of the trees and I'm not done with the middle ground, but while it dries, I can draw in a large tree in the foreground. And I'm simply using a black for this with a good amount of water and a square-headed brush. This is essentially a very rough sketch of a tree. I can go back and add the detail, the color, and all of that later. But I'm just trying to make sure that I have all of the line work, all of the shapes, the height, all of that exactly how I want it first. So I'm going to let that dry, and while I do, I'm moving back over to the middle ground and incorporating a different kind of tree. It's important to remember that your forests are always going to have different kinds of trees, and that every tree is going to be a little bit different. So here I'm using that same small square-headed brush and just drawing on something that I think will complement the rest of our forest nicely. I'm doing this little bit of tapping motions, as you can see, and before any of this dries, I'm actually going to switch my brush to a larger square-headed brush, the one with all of the inconsistencies, and I'm going to re-tap on all of those little details that we had. So this is just going to bring our trees to life and add some more consistency with the trees that we had in the middle ground and background and all of our applications, which is really nice and something we don't normally think about. But, using a consistent brush for that sort of thing can help. So from there, I'm just taking what little bit of orange is left from my brush and throwing it back into the foreground. And the foreground, all of it, there is still so much to do. This really is a process of layering, letting things dry, coming back, and don't ever feel like you have to finish the entire portion of the painting now. Recognize that you can come back to it, you can take time to think about it, you can do all of that, even when you're painting in 10 minutes. Don't ever feel like you have to finish one portion to move on to another, because sometimes you just learn so much in the process, and you get new ideas as you work, and, just don't ever worry about that sort of thing. So here I'm creating a fog and a mist with a gray, and I'm just moving my brush very softly to create these feathered edges that are just going to nicely move in and out of the painting. It's going to create a lot of additional depth, it's going to make the background softer, and I think it's just a nice little transitionary piece that will also match with the fog that we had in the back of the mountains. So from there, I'm taking my square-headed brush and I'm dabbing on a lot of these inconsistencies, a lot of these foliage pieces, and I'm doing this in different clusters. You notice that some are larger than others, some are more dense than others, some are going to be more orange than others. As I run out of paint, I'm dabbing it on and you can see much more through it. It's a little bit brighter, and this is going to imply additional depth. It's going to imply that there are more trees and foliage in the back, and when we work with more sharp and more saturated orange like this, it's going to look like it's in the foreground. So it's a very easy way of building depth in your painting by just letting the pigment run out on your brush and on your canvas. Sometimes things just work out wonderfully, and it's great to know how to do that in the future. So I'm also taking that orange and I'm working it back down into the bottom of our foliage and our grass. This is where all of the leaves are falling, of course, and we need those warm tones at the bottom as well. So you can see that I'm really running out of time here, and now I'm really just going to be throwing paint literally everywhere. I'm putting it in the foreground, I'm putting it in the middle ground, I'm putting it on the ground, and I'm just trying to build up these warm, saturated areas, this additional detail as everything's beginning to dry. And this really does make the process kind of fun. When you work in 10 minutes, you get so much done in these short little periods of time. But you can always take so much more time. You can take 20 minutes, you can take 30, an hour and a half. As long as you're having fun and painting, it is all good. But I thought I'd show you this portion too. I'm just adding a highlight with a yellow and a white. I had to let all of the orange dry completely to do this, so I couldn't do it within the time constraint, but I really do think it helps aid the painting. So this is just a yellow and a white. And here's my finished painting. This is at about 13 or 14 minutes. So I did cheat a little bit, but I think it really helped the painting. It really aided it. I just added on additional highlights and a little bit of brown to the base of our tree. And it's amazing what all of that can do. So I really hope you've enjoyed. I hope you've learned something. And, if you'd like to see more of these, I upload every Saturday. So just hit that subscribe button, and I will see you incredibly soon.